Hey, thanks for tuning in to my little talk on my health journey. I've definitely learned a lot of stuff over the last 9 to 10 months, and I'm excited to share it with you. So the only way that I can make sure that I don't forget something is put it into a PowerPoint, because there's a lot that I wanted to share. So I have this this PowerPoint that I put together. So a little nerdy, but it's going to keep me on track and keep me moving forward. So first, I'm going to kind of give an overview of where we're going to go today. Really quick version. Why am I doing this? So a couple disclaimers for a couple minutes. Really brief overview of the topics I'm going to cover for a minute. My story, just kind of a brief summary of my story, and majority of the time, as you can see, is just going to be on all the different topics that I've tried, things I've tried out, and then maybe ending on some of the things I'm exploring next after the talk. Total run time, I think, will be around 68 minutes, if I do my math correct. Why am I doing this? Well, I think that a lot of you have maybe heard of some of these things, like chiropractic and stuff, but maybe haven't heard of frequency-specific microcurrent or cupping. I had never heard of cupping until a month ago. So I want to introduce, as one of the goals is to introduce something that you may not have heard about before. Maybe you have heard about it before, but maybe don't know as much about it. That was my case for acupuncture. I had heard of it. I sort of thought I knew what it was doing, but I didn't really know. So I'm hoping that this talk will give you a little bit of information about what it's doing and kind of what my experience of doing those things was. And ultimately, I'm hoping that it will inspire you, that my talk can help you if you have a health challenge that you've been working with, that it will be something that will inspire you to kind of find new ways to support your health. So, all right, so there's a couple disclaimers, and the first one's pretty obvious. I'm not a doctor, and I am definitely not offering medical advice or prescribing any treatments. That's not what I'm doing. So I am also not an expert in any of these fields, but I have researched and experienced these things all firsthand. So I'm just merely sharing my story and what I've learned so far. I am not setting out to downplay Western or traditional medicine. So I want to make sure that's very clear that I think this is something that can be done alongside of Western medicine. I'm not trying to say that you should avoid Western medicine or that it's bad. This is just things that I think that can supplement or come alongside Western medicine. And it's important to know that I'm not getting paid by anybody to do this talk. I'm doing it 100% on my own, so I am free from any compensation that might be made through this. This is just me trying to share my story. And this is an important one, I think, too. While I'm not making this video to sell a specific product, I do want to make it known that I am a distributor for essential oils, as well as a device called a Healy. However, the purpose of the talk is to focus on things that I've experienced and what has helped me. And I'm not going to try to push or persuade you to buy anything. If you're interested in anything I've mentioned before in this talk, you can talk to me about it afterwards. But really the goal is just to share my story, share what worked for me, share what I found helpful. I'm not trying to promote a sale through this. So, but I'd be happy to talk with you afterwards if you do have questions about it. So. All right, so let's jump into some major themes. Now, they kind of both pop up on the screen here at the same time, but the first one is that your body, we're going to talk about your body's ability to heal on its own and supporting that system. And then we're going to talk about, this is probably the real main theme that I feel like has been through a lot of the treatments that I have, is this thing called frequency, energy, and vibration. And so if you want to, this is a quote from Nikola Tesla, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And it's entirely possible that I've already lost some of you and that you're like, this guy's kind of crazy. What are you talking about? Energy, frequency, and vibration? It sounds weird. And I wouldn't think that you're weird to think that too, because I'd never heard these terms or really focused on them until my health journey. And I've found a lot of health and healing through exploring some of these things. So that's why I'm going to talk about them. So here we go. This is kind of a quick overview of kind of the topics we're going to cover. We're going to start by talking about chiropractic, then move on to essential oils, but specifically as it relates to frequency. And then moving on down into number 3 here, supplements, and then acupuncture and cupping in the purple pie slice there. And then a good majority of the time at the end talking about FSM and a little bit about the vagus nerve in there. So I really encourage you to stick through to the end if you can, and if not, jump back and watch it because I will be recording this. All right, so here is my story. So what my symptoms were back in November, I went on a trip to Florida to do some filming, and after carrying up a bunch of gear up some stairs, I noticed that my heart rate would not calm down. It was staying at 100 to 108, 115 beats per minute. Sometimes it'd get down to 105, but it would just stay there, and I couldn't catch my breath. And I was sitting for several hours. After I set everything up, I would sit, and I was just holding a camera there and filming like a long presentation, and my heart just would not calm down. And I was like, what is going on? It lasted throughout my shoot, which is several days. It was 3 or 4 days. It would calm down a little bit. It'd get down to maybe like 98, 103, 95. It'd kind of hover down there. When I went to sleep, it'd get down into the 70s or something like that, and I could calm down and go to sleep. But as soon as I did anything that exerted energy the next morning, it would come back and it would be there most of the day. And I just always feel this shortness of breath and elevated heart rate. Now, there's a lot of things out there that it could be. It could be thyroid related, it could be COVID, it could be a bunch of different things, but I had no idea what was going on. So I went to the ER while I was in Florida. I didn't do 2 trips in ER. In Florida, I did 1 there, and I did 1 back when I came back to Michigan. And they did several different tests. They did x-rays, they did of my chest, they did blood tests. They checked for, and it was not thyroid. My thyroid was fine because that can cause elevated heart rate. They checked for a stroke. They checked for blood clots. Both of those came back negative. I did an EKG when I was in the ER both times, and then also with my doctor. That's why it says 3 times there. I went to the doctor a couple times when I was back. And I eventually ultimately did an echo stress test, and I passed that with flying colors. I got up to 12 minutes and got my heart up to like 180 beats per minute or something, and was doing great. And all the photos they took were clear, and there was no problems. I even saw a cardiologist afterwards and just said, what do you recommend? And he didn't see any problems. So he said, I don't really know what it is. We can give you this monitoring device that's going to monitor for the next 30 days, but I don't have traditional health insurance, so it was going to cost several $1,000s for this device. And I told him that. He's like, you know what, you don't even need this. I'm going to tell you right now, we're not going to find anything. So just don't save yourself the money, and don't even get that monitoring thing. Just do exercise, try to eat healthy, and that's what he basically prescribed. So yeah, that's kind of what my story was. So I had been doing a couple things prior to this. I had been doing good chiropractic care and using oils regularly. I think those continue to support me along my journey, and I still think they're absolutely crucial to helping me stay healthy. But some of the things that I implemented right away was I started taking specific supplements from my naturopath. I did acupuncture and cupping more recently here in August and September, and then I did this technology. It's not specifically frequency-specific microcurrent, but it's kind of based off of that technology. So I wanted to also just kind of give a disclaimer here that each of these modalities can be used correctly and incorrectly. And if you've heard horror stories about any type of, like a chiropractor or something that went wrong, I'm not disacknowledging that those things happen. But what I do want to point out is that there are good and there are bad chiropractors, there are good and there are bad acupuncturists. There are good and bad of everything, right? Like if you're trying to go to find a Mexican restaurant or a Chinese restaurant, you might try out a bunch of them and finally find the one you're like, this is the one that is our favorite, and we're going to keep going to that. And it's not unlike, a good chiropractor. Finding a good chiropractor is something that you should try to do. And there are different things that I look for now that I wouldn't have known to look for before. But all of chiropractic, I think, is trying to do good things, but there's different modalities and different things. So all that to say that if you've had a bad experience or heard a horror story, there are bad things that happen in the Western traditional medicine daily. That's why their malpractice insurance is 5 times what chiropractors pay. I think it's like, don't quote me, but I think it's like $10,000 a year or something like that. It could be way more than that, where chiropractors, I think, are closer to like $2,000 a year for malpractice insurance. So again, I'm not sure if those are the exact numbers, but I know that there are things that happen in traditional Western medicine that are bad stories as well, but we tend to somehow just go, well, that's just kind of how it works. But when it comes to like a chiropractor or somebody else, we kind of go, oh my gosh, we need to stay away from that. But I'm like, well, it's kind of like airplane crashes. There's so much more car crashes on a day-to-day basis, but we drive our cars, and yet we're afraid to go fly in an airplane because like one plane crashes every 5 to 10 years or something like that. And the quantity of flights to crashes is so low, but we tend to put a lot of that fear into that one story. So open your mind if you have heard those stories to just be receptive of, there are good chiropractors, acupuncturists, and practitioners out there. You do need to just kind of find the good ones. So let's start with this question. How do you know if you're healthy? And I wanted to play a video for you. This is going to be Dr. Mark Wolfman he's my chiropractor from Rivertown Family Chiropractic, which is a Max Living office here in Grand Rapids. And this is only like a 2-minute video from a 30-ish minute talk that he gives when bringing in new patients. And I'll share more about it, but it was just absolutely revolutionary for me when I first heard it. So here's Dr. Mark.
And it comes down to what your paradigm is. There's the medical model of health, which basically says what? If you have a symptom, and this is the model I grew up in, if you have a symptom, what do you do with a symptom?
Treat it.
You treat it, typically with what? Some type of drug or surgery, right? So in this model over here, it's basically saying you don't have the capacity to heal on your own, right? You're genetically weak. You're destined for disease in this model over here. Again, this is the model I grew up in, that my family brought me up in. Or there's this model over here, where you believe the body is fearfully, wonderfully made. You're made in the image of God. You have this incredible potential to heal from the inside out. There's just something interfering with that. So what is your definition of health? So if I asked you, how do you know whether you're healthy or sick? You could wake up any given morning, you base your health off of how you what?
Feel.
And everybody answers that way. If I feel good and I look good, that means I'm healthy. But that's the most dangerous way to go about your health. So if we say health is the absence of symptoms, how is that a dangerous problem? Well, can you have heart disease and feel okay? Yes, you absolutely can. 18 to 20 years, you know what that stat is? It takes 18 to 20 years for a heart attack to develop. Did you know? So the first sign of coronary heart disease, 70% of the time is what? The heart attack itself, right? And over half of those first heart attacks are fatal. So feeling great when it comes to heart disease is not a good way to go about it. Cancer, they call the silent what? Killer, because you don't feel it. So we mentioned that health is not just about symptoms. And then what really is the definition of health? And the clue is that it's within the word. So who sees it? Heal, right? So your body heals. We know that's true. They used to think the blood is what healed, and the heart was known as the most important organ. So in old movies, when the EKG went flatline, they'd pronounce the patient what? Dead. Now they know it's not when your heart stops beating that you're dead. It's when your brain stops sending these signals, these messages to your body. That's when you're really dead. So they check the electrical signals now.
So I don't know about you, but for me, that when I first heard that, it all made sense, but I don't know if I had ever thought about it that way before. It just was, how do you know if you're healthy? Well, it's how you feel. And until you have a symptom, you don't really know if you're healthy or not. And so what should you be doing on a day-to-day basis to make sure that you're taking care of your body? And obviously we know some of them, like exercise and diet, but there are other things that we can be doing to help with that. So let's jump into chiropractic. My personal stories, I've seen 5 different chiropractors over the last 20 years. So just like that restaurant analogy I gave, I tried a bunch of them out. I liked certain things. I loved all the people. Every person I met at all of those chiropractors were fantastic, but they definitely have different ways of approaching chiropractic. So something that you can look for is in a chiropractor is the temporary relief chiropractors versus ones that are focused more on spinal correction. Temporary relief, think about it as like an ibuprofen. Like I have a back pain problem, I have a migraine, I have whatever it is. I'm going to go to a chiropractor, go there for a couple days, couple weeks, and then the pain's gone, and then you leave. That's basically treating a chiropractor like ibuprofen. that's, in my opinion, not the best way to take care of your health, because you're just treating a symptom and you're not actually focusing on trying to make your whole nervous system work at its peak potential. So that's where a spinal correction approach is going to be better. Something that the chiropractor I go to has is something called CBP certification, which is a lot more of that certificate. It's like several hundred hours of school and teaching that focuses on that spinal correction modality. And again, if you're a pregnant woman, look for something called the Websters Technique to support you during that pregnancy and in your birth. So I wanted to just say that chiropractic is, for me, has been key to ensuring that my body is functioning correctly. It's not just about back pain. And Dr. Mark gives, in that same talk, he gives this example of Christopher Reeve, Superman, the actor who played Superman. We all know he's passed away, but he had an accident from falling off a horse, and he injured his atlas bone, which pinched the spinal cord at the very top, and that made him a quadriplegic. And what he eventually died of was things that were in his, he had, I think it was heart failure. Did he have a bad heart? No, he didn't have a bad heart. He had a connection problem between his brain and his nervous system to his heart. And at the end, he couldn't digest his food. All of his systems that were below the neck were shutting down. And it's because that connection between the brain and the nervous system had been pinched and severed and inhibited, I guess is the right word. So I think if you're looking for a chiropractor, you should be looking for one that is going to focus on spinal correction and that making sure that your nervous system is fully functioning at its peak potential. And they also have, in this particular, the Max Living, they have this thing called the 5 Essentials, which is focusing on your mental health, focusing on detoxifying, focusing on diet, focusing on exercise, and of course, core chiropractic. And so they really, in our office there that I go to, they have a TV all the time talking about these things. The doctors are always encouraging you. Their staff are inspiring you to focus on different parts of your diet or your exercise. So they're really focused on the whole human and your body's self-ability to heal. So I really appreciate that about them. And I go about once a week currently. When you first start out, sometimes it's a little bit more because they're trying to see how your body is going to react to the adjustments. How does it accept or not accept? How much progress are you making? And they use x-rays to kind of measure those things. But I go once a week, and honestly, if I could go more, I probably would. If I could go less, I probably wouldn't, because I really, every week, I find that it really does. I go on Monday mornings, it sets my week in the right direction. So I really recommend chiropractic. I know that it's helping my body to stay completely in tune with, all the organs are working at their peak potential because my nervous system is able to communicate my brain through my nervous system to those organs. So let's transition to essential oils. And many of you have heard of essential oils before, but today I'm going to specifically talk about frequencies and oils, which we're going to get kind of crazy. We're going to talk about frequencies. But I've been using essential oils for a number of years. But there's when we talk about frequencies, there's a couple of different bridges that you may have heard of, like a bunch of soldiers in 1850 that walked across the Angler's Bridge, and they walked in the same rhythm. They were all walking in step, as you do. You march in step, but that frequency matched the frequency of the building, and that when you resonate, that's called resonance. When you resonate with the same frequency of the bridge. I said building, I think, a minute ago. The bridge collapsed. And in the same way the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, here's a video of it. This had to do with the wind blowing it at a certain frequency, and it just got worse and worse and eventually collapsed. So, and then coming back here to this little picture of a glass shattering, a lead crystal glass has a specific frequency that if you match it, the opera singer matches that frequency when you're singing. Your audio, your vocal cords are vibrating at a certain frequency. It's hitting that glass, and it eventually resonates and tunes exactly with the glass, and it will shatter because you have resonated with that glass. Now, just because you match a frequency and resonate with it doesn't mean that you're going to break something. It just means that you have found a frequency that matches the other frequency, and you can use that to to support and encourage or to resonate or vibrate in a more healthy way. So here's a quote that I pulled from this website, livescience.com, and there's a couple other places where this is mentioned, but let me just read it here. Bruce Tainio, a famous researcher, found that a healthy body resonates at a frequency of 62 to 70 megahertz. And when your frequency drops to 58 megahertz, that is when disease starts. Bacteria, viruses, and diseases each have their own low frequency that influences your energy field. And we're going to talk about the energy field a little more in a bit. But specifically, some of the oils that they listed on the site, they help you to increase your frequency. So the frankincense oil, I think, is the highest resonating frequency at 147 megahertz. So if you put that oil on you, it helps your body to vibrate at a higher frequency. So during cold and flu season, it's one of the things that I like to do to support my immune system. It helps me to raise my frequency and try to keep me away from things like a cold or flu, which, as you see in the next bullet points here, starts around 57 to 60 megahertz. And you can see disease starts at 58, cancer 42, and death begins at 25, which is really low. So you do have a vibration, you do have a frequency, and I use the oils to kind of, I use them for several reasons, but today I wanted to talk about frequency and vibration. So I don't know if I've lost any of you already at this point, because you're like, this guy's crazy, and I don't know if I buy it. You're not alone. When I first heard about frequencies and megahertz and vibrations and stuff, I was kind of like, what? I don't know about that. But as I've kind of, over the last 9 to 10 months, I've really kind of researched it a ton. There's a ton of science out there on this stuff, and it does happen. We do have, our nervous system is an electric system. There's electricity running through. All molecules have a frequency and a vibration. So, so hopefully you're open enough to at least the possibility, if not totally accepting that it's true. But it definitely is something that I've researched and does exist. So let's jump into the oils that I take. I've been using them regularly for several years, but my daily support for my health journey recently was an oil called Shutran. I just put that on as kind of my daily thing. Raising my frequency, as I said, frankincense is one of the top ones for raising your frequency. Because of my lungs and the heart rate thing, I was looking for things that would help with circulation, blood flow, and so I kind of had a couple combinations, lemongrass and clove, and then also Aroma Life and orange, to just kind of help with supporting those circulation systems. And then one of my favorite oils is this one called Breathe Again for lung support, and really just, for me, it does what it says. It helps me breathe again. If I needed more oxygen, or if you have, it's similar to kind of what Vicks Vapro Rub does in terms of just kind of opening you up and just kind of helping you to get more oxygen in. So I use Breathe Again all the time, and as well as several others. So, all right, moving into naturopaths. So naturopaths they're different. They're all different. They all offer different tools to help you support healing in your body naturally. So they can use a wide variety of tools, including supplements, physical medicine, hydrotherapy, diet nutrition counseling, exercise and lifestyle counseling. And the primary tool that my naturopath used for me was supplements, and as well as diet and nutrition counseling. So if you have different, there are several of you who maybe already go to a naturopath. They may offer different tools, different supports to help you heal naturally. So they all have their strengths, and they all have different ways of doing similar things. They basically all have the goal of helping your body to heal and to be as healthy as it can through natural means. So how do they know what your body needs? So a naturopath, typically, from what I understand, I haven't asked a lot of people about this, but from what I know, there are 3 ways that they can try to find what your body needs. One is through just a consultation. They're going to talk with you and sit down and say, what are you experiencing? And they're going to hear you out and then say, well, here are some things that you can do to help you. So a consultation. They can do blood tests. My son went to a different naturopath than I did, and he did blood tests for specific food allergies and different things that you can test for. And some of these blood tests are things that you typically won't find at a traditional Western medicine doctor's office. These are kind of very specific tests for specific things that are run by different labs that look for, different ways of kind of looking at health. And then muscle testing, which is known as applied kinesiology, is another way to measure what your body needs. So let's talk about that last one, muscle testing. So my naturopath uses a combination of two modalities, two testing methods, I should say. One is called morphogenic field technique, MFT, and one is called NRT. So really the best way to explain this is through a video, and this is a video that I put together for my naturopath doctor. I would go to Dr. Keith Sarver at the Natural Health and Healing Center here in Grand Rapids. And so let's watch a video of him. He's going to explain, it's about a 6-minute video. He's going to explain what MFT, or morphogenic field technique, is.
MFT stands for morphogenic field technique. Morphogenic is a type of testing where we're looking at how the morph or the genesis of energy happens outside of the human frame. So every organ and cell in our body puts off an energy. So we have electrical energy, as it were, that surrounds the body and forms a field. So what we're checking is how that patient is responding to nutrition, how they're responding to the testing vials when we bring the vials to them or away from them, so we can see how their body responds when the nutritional applications are applied as well. If it decreases their field, we're looking at changing that. We want something that increases the energy field so they're more vibrant or more vital in their expression of the energy out of the cellular or out of the organ level. So when we see that increase, then we see the parallel improvement in their health. It's really a good tool to gauge how they did from one visit to the next and to see if there's anything that's interfering, such as a food or some sort of immune challenge, maybe a parasitic or fungal, which is very common. And then we can see what is showing up from the testing vials as far as what is the body asking for to have more attention paid to with the testing. So the way that we measure the field is we bring in something that the patient's body doesn't want. So a female, we're bringing in a male energy. So typically we'll use a product that supports male endocrine or male hormone support. We bring that from a distance as we're testing the patient through muscle testing. And when their arm goes weak, as that thing that their body does not want comes closer to them, then we know that that's the edge of their morphogenic field. We can show that through a visual aid to the brand new patient is this morphogenic field technique picture, which shows the energy sphere surrounding the human frame with imaging called chromatography. In creation and the flow of the atom, we see the proton, neutron, electron flowing in what we call a torus pattern. Core of the apple, same symmetrical design, and as the planets go in the universe, the torus flow there as well. So that same torus pattern surrounds the human body. So we pick up on what's interfering or what's enhancing that field with the nutritional testing. So when I talk about the vials, we're using nutritional vials that were imprinted with specific energies that are the exact replica of the cell that we're testing for or the organ that we're checking for. So this kit here has different cellular energies. The energies in this kit relate to different parts of what we believe are foundational essentials that the human frame needs to function. So if we have a good digestive tract from top to bottom, so mouth, stomach, small intestine, gallbladder, liver, colon, then we can absorb the nutrients that we find that the patient needs much more effectively. So some of the foundational things are very non-negotiable. We have to get that patient functioning with a good digestive tract, good level of minerals in their system, good level of essential fatty acids, etc., so that their nutritional intake from the outside is absorbed from their foods as well as the supplements. Another way that we're measuring how, as I mentioned earlier, how they're doing is with this other kit. We call it the white kit, and this has the energies of anything from appendix cells to all the way down to white blood cells, so we can see if there's thyroid problems, pancreas, you name it, the energies of all the different organs. Plus there's some energies that are variants, so we would call those energies types of disease, such as a Hashimoto's autoimmune disease with the thyroid, etc. So we can see what the patient is struggling with a little more specifically. Then we bring into the picture some other immune challenges to see what's causing the thyroid to struggle, and other food energies similar to these, about 60 different common food energies, to see what is slowing down the physiology of that patient and really affecting the function of their thyroid or the pancreas or whatever we're concerned with at that point. So then we apply good nutritional protocols or remedies to see what the patient is going to respond to the best. So you can go to the health food store and pick up maybe an ashwagandha herb for adrenal function, but it might not be the right formulation. It might have some binders, it might have something in there that's not specifically the best for you. So we keep in our testing rack several different things that are going to help enhance adrenal function. I don't know in my educated mind what the cellular magnetism of your adrenals is going to want. It may want more B6, it may want more ashwagandha, as I mentioned. It may just want some relief from an irritant. It may not want anything at that point in time. So a relief from an irritant might be that we need to remove fungus or yeast from the system to help that adrenal gland function. So that in essence is what morphogenic field technique is, and it's really much better felt than told. They experience what it feels like to see how their muscle response and how the foods and irritants had on their testing.
So I don't know if all that made sense to you guys, but just to really summarize it quickly, you have this field that's around you, and he brings things in, and if your body wants it, then your arm stays strong, and if your body doesn't want it, it goes weak. Or conversely, if you have a supplement that's near your body and you're strong, and as you pull it away, if it gets weaker, that's your body saying, no, I want that, please bring it back. And it sounds kind of crazy if you've never experienced it before, and I can tell you I went in pretty skeptical, wondering if this was a real thing. And I can tell you that I thought that these people were these doctors were pushing harder on my arm, going in. And I can tell you that's definitely not true. I, for sure, hold my arm up the same amount of strength every single time. And there is times where I can't resist it. It's very obvious that my arm is going weak. So it sounds, until you, like he said, it's better felt and experienced in that way, then, because otherwise it just kind of sounds kind of crazy, especially if you've never had it done before. But I've experienced it now for since December, so about nine or 10 months, and I fully believe that it's real and it's definitely happening. And a couple of success stories that I can share outside of myself. My dad, unbeknownst to him, he stopped snoring after taking certain supplements that were tailored to him. And my mom had her diabetes numbers completely reversed. They were kind of climbing, and then she started taking supplements based on the morphogenic field technique that her body said, you need these things. She started taking them, and then her diabetes numbers went down. These were not reasons that they went to the doctor. They just wanted to be healthy and wanted to try it out. And these are things you just start to find things that you didn't realize were happening in your life that start to get better. For me, I would sit on the floor with my kids for 20 minutes. I'd get up and I'd be really sore. A lot of that went away after I started taking the supplements. So yeah, it's something that is different, but I fully support the modality. It's really worked for me. even if it sounds crazy if you've never experienced it before. So for me, what I did is I started taking them in December. I did cut out a lot of things, coffee, which is huge, coffee, gluten, dairy, sugar, and eggs, all the things that you would expect someone to try to cut out. I have brought back eggs. I do have cheese still every now and then in terms of, I try to stay away from processed cheese, but I do have that, and that's okay. I've tested to not have, those things are okay to have. He didn't tell me not to have coffee, I just chose to do that. I still pretty much have refrained from gluten, dairy, and sugar. I do have ice cream every now and then and that kind of thing, but I try to stick with those. Yeah, so that's what that bullet point says. So how have they helped me? I noticed as soon as they started taking them that those symptoms that I was having of the high heart rate and the difficulty breathing, those not only happened less frequently, but I was able to recover significantly faster. So rather than having like a 3-day episode or a full day episode, I would have it happen once or twice a month, and when I did, it would last for 1 to 2 hours. And so there was a period where I didn't have a single episode for a full, I think it was 45 days, where I didn't have an episode happen at all after taking the supplements. So I think the supplements really help my body to heal. And I think it's really important to note too that with this technique, the morphogenic field technique and NRT, which I haven't explained quite yet, your body is telling you exactly what it needs. So there may be 3 different magnesiums from 3 different manufacturers, or one different complex, like this one has magnesium and calcium mixed together. Your body may want or not want one of the magnesiums, and it may want the other one, and that's because something might bind you up. Like you might take this one and it interferes with this one. So with the muscle testing, you're able to get very, very specific about what your body needs in that moment. So it's pretty cool if you subscribe to it, if you are okay with believing it, which I fully believe, that your body is literally telling you, I don't want that magnesium. It's not going to help me. I want that magnesium. And so he'll test for all these things and check your field and make sure that there's not a conflict or that it's binding you up in any way. So I think that's important to note too. So I wanted to, back in February, wanted to go to acupuncture just because I wanted to try it. I mean, when I wasn't getting answers that I was hoping for from kind of some of the traditional doctors, I wanted to explore alternative means. So I wanted to do acupuncture, but I didn't get in until August. And right about the same time in August, when I did see an acupuncturist, is right when I started using this device called a Healy. Now, for me, I'm going to take a little bit of a side trip here and talk about the vagus nerves and past injuries. So before I jump into those 2 things, for me, this is kind of specific, so I'm going to try to fly through it. But the vagus nerve, if you don't know, is a nerve that runs down your left side. So it's on the heart side of your body, and it controls that fight or flight mechanism in your body. So for me, it felt like this is exactly something I need to focus on because my heart, I think, is going into fight, or flight mode and trying to get me out of there. Something was triggering it and it wouldn't shut back off. And so that's all related to the vagus nerve. So I just explained that. So, but let me talk a little bit. Dr. Carolyn McMakin talks a little bit more about the vagus nerve. So let me let her explain that here.
Central sensitization is what we're talking about. You can look it up. The stress centers stay on even when the threat is gone. They're said to be sensitized, and they fire with very little objective external stressor or threat. And the reason is that the midbrain remembers. The midbrain remembers. It puts in unconscious, subconscious, or rarely conscious memory, early childhood and past injury, pain and stressful events, so you can predict and survive future events. And our problem is that the patient is unlikely to be aware of this sensitization or any of these memories. Visual stimuli, sounds, smells, even textures, furniture configurations can trigger the midbrain and set off a stress response reaction of no conscious memory of why it's happening or even what is happening. The stress centers, the endocrine and the nervous system, react to all stress in more or less the same way. They suppress the vagus in order to increase the heart rate, suppress digestion, increase inflammation. Why? It's well-intentioned. It's so you can survive. It is how the brain and neuroendocrine system interpret what is threat. And that is influenced by a lot of things. In a sensitized patient, the midbrain stress centers have a different and lower firing threshold. They fire with less objective threat. And the stress centers stay on from normal life stresses and events. To 80% of the people in this room, the sound of a doorknob opening produces no stress response whatsoever. To anybody in this room that was molested as a child, especially a child under the age of 10, the sound of a doorknob clicking will raise the heart rate, even if the person doesn't remember the event. The sound will raise the heart rate, interfere with digestion, and create inflammation and turn down the vagus. That's how powerful this response is. So if the vagus, if the stress centers stay on from normal life stresses and events and keep the vagus off, keeping the body in survival, if you're down here at this bottom of the pyramid and you're always feeling threat in your body and in your nervous system, how do you access this universal energy field? It is my proposition that the vagus nerve is the key to inflammatory balance. But how do you treat the vagus quickly and safely? You can do breathing and silence and meditation, but that takes years. And there are times when the silence itself is a stressful event, if that participated or if that was part of your original trigger. For us, it has become easy. We modify the vagus with frequencies and with microcurrent.
So another thing for me that resurfaced a lot, mostly through my conversations with my acupuncturist, is that there are some injuries that I had as a child, things that you wouldn't think affect you that actually do affect you. So I was in a car accident as an infant. I had a bit of my mom had a little bit of a traumatic birthing experience. There was a lot of chaos happening in the lady giving birth next to her, and the doctors were focused on that other lady and kind of left my mom alone. And there was some other things, complications with the birth. I had asthma as a child. I broke my collarbone, specifically on the vagus nerve side of my body, when I was, I think, 3 years old. So a lot of these old injuries as an infant, I think, very much come into play as an adult. So if you're working on trying to figure out your health puzzle, try to rethink about some of the injuries you may or may not have had, and ask people who may have known you when you were super young if there are things that may have connected to some of your injuries. So for me, I wanted to support the vagus nerve using a couple different things, acupuncture and cupping, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and then FSM, frequency-specific microcurrent, or at least a version of it, which we'll talk about. So let's talk about acupuncture. What is acupuncture? Honestly, I found this really short video that says it way better than I could, and it's from Johns Hopkins. So let me just play that real quick.
From a modern biological perspective, acupuncture is stimulating the body to balance itself, and it does that through complex neurochemical pathways that affect the immune system, the nervous system, and the inflammatory process. Now, from a traditional Eastern perspective, the theory explains that our bodies are a microcosm of the natural world, and that there is energy at play that animates us, that makes us alive. And each of our organs contain a type of energy that's called qi. And that qi, that energy, travels through the body through pathways, and we call those pathways meridians. And along those pathways, there are points where that energy is said to collect, and each of those points have very specific functions, and it's by stimulating those very precise, very specific points that we're able to affect certain changes in the body depending on what we're treating.
Okay, so for me, acupuncture, you know, the way that it worked for me, and I asked a lot of questions, was there were certain places along my heart and where my connections with my heart and with my lungs that when they put the needles in, if they get inflamed or they get red, that shows that there was inflammation inside in the body. So when you stub your toe, it gets red, it gets hot. That is inflammation. That's your body's defense mechanism to try to heal or support an injury. But how do you know if your heart is inflamed or your lungs are inflamed or something inside has inflammation? So acupuncture helps to, for me, it helped to release some of that inflammation. It lets some of the heat, they use, in Chinese medicine they call it heat, let some of that heat escape. And there's a lot of that, a lot of energy flow restoration that happens to let the heart and the kidney reconnect, because they both connect. There's a lot of connections there that are important. Yeah, so that's some of the ways that it helped me, which I just mentioned: organ inflammation, energy flow, muscle tension. So let's talk about cupping here for a second. I had never heard of it before, but what this looks like and what it is there's essentially these cups that they put on you that they kind of put a little flame inside the cup, which creates a vacuum. They pull the flame out and they kind of put it on your back, and that kind of suctions to your back just from the vacuum. And what it's doing is it's releasing tension and muscle, pulling the muscle tissue away from, from the nerves or from whatever. This is where I'm going to fall apart in terms of my knowledge of what it's actually doing. So, but here's what I'll tell you I experienced. I had some incredibly tight knots in my back. Typically, you can only get those out, from my understanding, was through massage. And just by having the cups on my back for a period of time afterwards, my back was completely just super loose. So it's like it released the muscle tension. It pulled that tightness away and allowed things to flow again. And I actually really enjoyed the cupping experience that I had in terms of like the relief that I felt afterwards. It didn't really hurt. What did sometimes hurt was, you can see in this second photo here, there's her hands are kind of moving a cup along, and that's another way to kind of like, it's almost like a massage in that it's causing suction as you move. You don't always need to do, or the practitioner may not always move the cup along. And that was a little bit painful because it was kind of like a suction moving across your skin. But afterwards, she did it right along my collarbone here, and I was super tight right along here where, this was just rock solid tightness in this muscle. So it really loosened up, and that's right where where the vagus nerve goes right along, right where here this was. So that really released a lot of that muscle tightness that might have been kind of constraining that vagus muscle. So I really enjoyed, I guess, more so the after feeling of that. And then you might have noticed and have heard of this because of Michael Phelps has got all these circles on his arm, and that's to loosen up his muscles as well. So that's kind of, he does cupping. I thought that was kind of interesting to point out. So let's jump into frequency-specific microcurrent. So I have a pretty powerful video that I'm going to play that's just going to introduce you to what frequency-specific microcurrent is. And I think it's about 2 minutes. I've edited it down. I pulled this off of YouTube. I'm going to put a link to the full video in the description so you can watch the whole thing. But this is just a specific story that is just really powerful, and I want to play it for you.
Terrell Owens, he is a wide receiver in American football, and he was injured on a Sunday, December 19th. He avulsed the deltoid ligament in his ankle, and he shredded the interosseous ligament that holds the tibia and fibula together, and he had an open spiral fracture in the fibula. This was a career-ending injury. So they called me on Monday morning and said he wanted to play in the Super Bowl in 6 weeks. So I got on a plane and I flew overnight, and when he got out of the operating room, we put him in a limousine laying on the bench, and we put the microcurrent on him for the 1-hour trip home, and we started with the frequencies to stop the bleeding. So we treated him 24 hours, and then another 6 hours, and then 4 to 5 hours every day. And the team trainer was good to his word. 3 days after the surgery, he was in a swimming pool, this deep in water, with a bag, a Ziploc bag over his leg, running on a treadmill in the water to reduce the impact. Day 3, 4, 5. I arrived on day 6, Monday, and this is what I saw. Terrell and his girlfriend were having a snowball fight in the front yard. He was wearing sneakers, running shoes, right? Trainers, in the snow, 6 days after surgery, chasing his girlfriend, throwing snowballs. So he played in the Super Bowl 6 weeks after the injury and ran for 157 yards, which is a lot in a football game. And the recovery was judged impossible. When he was elected to the Hall of Fame in 2018, he thanked the FSM Dream Team for his recovery.
So when I first heard that story, I was kind of like, what is this? This is, it sounds completely crazy, which you still don't quite know what it is, but that sounds impossible. A career-ending injury that should have taken at least 18 weeks to at least get healed up was healed in like 6 weeks, and he played in the Super Bowl and got an MVP. Like, what is this thing? And at the same time, I had just been introduced to a device that is operates in similar ways to what this is. So I wanted to, just first of all, I want to acknowledge where I got this from, that story. I'm going to put this, obviously can't click it here in the video. Actually, this is a video on an introduction to frequency-specific microcurrent. And this will introduce you very well into it. It's an hour long, but it's worth it if you're curious. I'll put it in the link into the notes, as well as a link to the video that we just watched. So let's talk about frequency-specific microcurrent. This is something that has actually been, has its roots back in the early 1900s, but was shut down for a period of time. A lot of modalities were kind of shut down. And has since come back in the late 90s. And the big pioneer of this is Dr. McMakin. So what is it? It's something that, what it does is it uses specific currents at certain frequencies. Remember we talked about resonance and vibration at certain frequencies. And it puts a very, very tiny amount of electrical current into the body that resonates at very specific, so that's why it's called specific frequencies. So frequency-specific microcurrent. You don't really feel it. It feels like kind of like a tingling, maybe a little tickling, or maybe like your hands just starting to fall asleep. But it's not painful. That's kind of what it feels like. But just to kind of give you an example, there are frequencies for everything. And they're still discovering some of them. But like if you have like a kidney stone, there is a frequency that resonates with the kidney stone that will break it up. But that frequency, if you run it on your body and you don't have a kidney stone, nothing happens. It's just kind of like playing music, and hearing music, and nothing really happens. It's a vibration that your body is like, okay, I don't know nothing to do here. But if you have a kidney stone, it will target. It's a very specific frequency that will target a kidney stone and help to support taking care of that. So it works at the cellular level. What that means is that it's working, all of your cells have a charge, and they all have a positive and a negative charge. So outside of the cell, each and every cell is a positive charge, and inside the cell is a negative charge. And some of them are sitting dormant, and when you resonate, just like you would with like a car remote control car start, you're pushing a button and a very specific frequency is unlocking your car. In the same way, you can activate cells that are sitting there and wake them up and have them do something. So that's kind of what's happening, is it's working at a very cellular level. There's a ton of science out there on this, tons and tons of science, and I have tons of links in the description about all this stuff. So the benefits of FSM is a 500% increase in ATP production. That's what your cell uses for energy. The fact that I'm talking, I'm using ATP to move my hands in the screen here, to talk, to blink, to breathe. That's ATP is what's doing that. It's generated by mitochondria in the cell. So there's a 500% increase in ATP with certain FSM programs. It's a significant increase in proteins, in amino acids, in blood supply, and a lot of other things. And this is all in that YouTube link that I posted in the slide before, all of these kind of stats that I'm pulling that from. The source is Dr. McMakin. So we talked about the cell and its frequency, but we didn't really talk about cell health. So if you kind of look at this graph on the lower left, a young healthy cell has a frequency of negative 70 millivolt, I think it's millivolts, microvolts. It says, not sure which one it is. But as you start to get older and you have, stressors that come into your life, they could be emotional stressors, they can be pollution, they can be sickness, it can be all kinds of different things. You start to see your health of your cells can deteriorate over time. So you can kind of see as you work from the lower left at a young healthy cell, as you lose more voltage in the cells, they start to move progressively towards edemas and blood loss and tumors and cell division, and eventually the cell will die when it doesn't have voltage anymore. So that's kind of what the frequency-specific technology is kind of helping to keep your cells. It's going to boost the voltage of your cells to try to bring them back towards health. Now, can you take a cell from like negative 15 all the way back to 70? No. You still need, you can bring it closer to cell health, but it's usually like 10, maybe 15, and I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but you can support your cell health by boosting its frequency to a certain degree, but you still need good diet, good supplementation, good exercise, good sleep, all these things. You can't just kind of do everything through frequencies, but they're there to kind of, as I said, support and come alongside. So let me introduce you to kind of how this connects with me. So this little thing I'm holding is called a Healy. It is not specifically FSM, but it operates on the same kind of technology. It uses so frequency for specific microcurrent, or FSM, uses a machine that costs about $20,000 to $30,000, and it has two channels, a channel A and a channel B, and you can put a megahertz on channel A and a megahertz on channel B, and that's what FSM is doing. The Healy is a single channel device that I use that puts a certain frequency, so there's just one channel into your body, and but there are several different programs that it comes with that kind of help you support your body. So here's kind of like a quick scrolling through. So there's a couple of different programs here. There's muscle support. You've got sleep-related things, balanced sleep. You've got mental balance and support, beauty and skin, hair, skin and nails. There's things on here for nerves, menopause, thyroid, food sensitivities, prostate, lungs. And it gets into things like meridians and chakras as well, and protection against EMF. But yeah, there's just a lot of different programs in this device that you can run on that single channel. So here's how it helped me. I basically had been running a variety of programs, and the device can scan you and tell you what you need using that morphogenic field. And other technologies. So I basically been running that program, whatever it tells me to run, and certain ones are are specific toward my things like circulation or lung support, things like that. So I've been running that, and I've felt great after running these effects. One specific story just from last night was actually 2 nights ago. I had somebody who had kind of said some things that were really frustrating relationship. It was a relationship that I had that just I felt like kind of betrayed. And relationships for me are, if I have dissonance in relationships, I internalize it, I blame myself, I feel the feelings, I get angry, I get frustrated. And I actually went to, that same day I was actually at my naturopath, and he did some muscle testing for something called a motion code, which I may get into, but he said, you're experiencing frustration, and long story short, he said you should run this specific program on the Healy to help you with it. And that night, so this is 2 nights ago, I put on an oil called Release, and then I ran a program called, I think it might have been called Release in the Healy. And I know this sounds crazy, but I completely, all of those, like that angst, that stress was gone. I don't know how, and for me that's not possible. Like until I have that relationship resolved and that connection reestablished, I lose sleep over it. So the fact that that combination did that was just blew my mind. But ultimately, what the Healy has been doing for me is it's just really been helping my cells support. It's been helping me, with all those systems internally using this type of microcurrent support. So I already kind of gave a quick demo of it. But kind of to wrap up on this one, because I don't want to spend too much time on this device, I wanted to just end with a video that a friend of mine, Jay, used it for something that he was feeling. So here's just a 2-minute quick little, testimonial of something that helped him. Hey everyone, I'm here with my buddy Jay, and hello. Jay recently tried out this little device that I was telling you about called the Healy. And Jay, just maybe you could tell people the issue you were having before was, and then what happened.
Sure. I run and do a lot of endurance sports, and for about 3 years, probably more than 3 years, I've had chronic hip pain, just really bad hip issues, and can get a little bit of relief with some ibuprofen and things like that, but just never had any kind of long-lasting relief, and it was pretty much there 24/7.
Wow.
Like all the time.
So what, like tightness or soreness?
Yeah, it was strange because I could never tell if it was like in the joint itself,
okay,
or if it was the muscles around the joint or
okay,
the tendons around the joint. So just a real frustrating annoyance.
Constant pain. Okay.
Yep.
So you tried the Healy.
I did try the Healy, and I have to say, if I'm being honest, I was pretty skeptical because it's been a long-term problem, and haven't really been able to find any medical solutions. So I was a little skeptical. But the first session I did, I noticed a drastic improvement on the side that I did it on, and the other side still felt the same. So then we ran another, maybe 2 more programs
over a couple different days,
over a couple different days, and it's been 3 weeks now.
Yeah,
it's been 3 weeks, and I literally, it sounds super corny, but I've literally have 0 hip pain.
Wow.
I've been running and riding my bike a ton.
That's crazy.
So, yeah,
in a good way.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks for
thanks
for sharing. I just wanted people to know your story.
I don't know exactly how it all worked or whatever, but it actually worked fantastic for me, and I would give it another
thumbs up from you.
Yeah,
cool. So that's kind of the end of my presentation, and I did have a slide here for just kind of some things I'm starting to explore, and I'm just going to really just basically briefly mention them more as a springboard for conversation. For if you're interested in one of these things, I'd love to. I don't know much about them. I'm just starting to explore them, but they're going to maybe either show you how crazy I've gotten with all this stuff, or maybe if you agree or subscribe to that these things are real, which I'm starting to very much believe because of my personal experience. I can't argue with the experience that I've had and the research that I've done. So I hope that maybe some of these things are things that can continue to help myself and just kind of inform you that they're out there. So some of the things I'm just starting to look for, actually I just got this thing, it's called an Aura ring. So this little ring here, which it's not focusing, but it's a technology that I got that measures sleep. You might have heard of the Whoop is another one. It's a bracelet that you wear and it measures your sleep. So I'm just starting to pay more attention to my sleep cycles, how sleep works, how specifically what this one does is it tells you if you've what your heart rate variability is, which that's a whole nother talk on heart rate variability, which again I'm concerned with my heart as one of the things that I was my symptoms. But it also talks about your readiness for working out. So if you work out too hard, you're actually going to hurt yourself. You may not know it. So this kind of measures your ability to how ready are you for the day? How ready are you for another workout? Do you need a day to rest and just kind of relax? And it measures temperature and steps and all that kind of stuff. I don't sell it. I just bought it. And I actually really like it. It's got a lot of amazing stats. So that's one thing that I'm just starting to kind of look into is how to kind of, I guess, biohack sleep a little more. Grounding and earthing, which is basically putting your feet in the soil and kind of touching the ground. And there are actually mats to do this. If it's winter in Michigan, you probably need a mat to do it because you don't want to go put your feet in the snow necessarily. Or maybe you do. But earthing and grounding can be really a really good thing. As I mentioned, there's something called emotion code healing, which I guess I won't get into too much of that, but the basic idea is that you can hold emotions or scars in your body, and they can be in a shoulder, they can be in your pancreas, something that you've had happen to you. You can actually carry that and carry it in certain places in your body. So again, it sounds kind of like craziness probably to some of you, but it's actually not that crazy. So, and then another thing that is kind of polarizing to some is kind of debating. Some people don't think that 5G and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that stuff really affect you at all, and some people think it's a major problem. So EMF pollution is what that kind of topic is all about. So I'm just starting to kind of look into what EMF, what that's all about. So yeah, so that's my presentation. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. I will put all of the links of all these things. I have a whole playlist on a lot of these things that I'll put together for you. A lot of research on the chiropractic, on the oils, on the frequencies, and all that stuff. It's all going to be in the description, and I would love to connect with you and kind of hear what your health journey is and just what you're exploring and discovering. And if you have questions or concerns or any of that kind of stuff, I'd love to just kind of see how I can maybe speak truth or help, or just hear what you're going through, and maybe we can collaborate and talk about some of that. So thanks again.